Welcome to Energy Future Now, one-on-one conversations with experts across energy, markets, and policy. Today, we'll be discussing the renewed hostilities in Iran and what it means for oil markets. Here with us today, Neil Atkinson, Senior Fellow at the National Center for Energy Analytics and former head of the Oil Markets Division for the IEA, joining Portia Roberts, Deputy Executive Director with the National Center for Energy Analytics.
Renewed hostilities between Iran and the United States have broken out following the collapse of the Memorandum of Understanding. We've already seen the price of oil rise sharply. Brent crude oil is already trading well above $90 a barrel. As well as the renewed hostilities in the Gulf, we're seeing the threat of hostilities by the Houthi rebels in Yemen against shipping through the Red Sea. This particularly affects oil exports from Saudi Arabia. And another factor which is now really starting to impact on the oil industry is drone attacks by Ukraine against Russian Black Sea oil installations, and that is causing an interruption to oil supplies too. So these three factors taken together, the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, and the Ukraine-Russia conflict, threaten sufficient disruption to global oil supply to send prices even higher than the $95 a barrel we're seeing today. And this, of course, raises the prospect of damage to the global economy and a reduction in global economic growth, which affects us all.
Neil, talk to me about the oil market and its ability to withstand the renewed hostilities today.
Well, as far as supplies through the Strait of Hormuz are concerned, the market is not in a position to withstand further significant disruption. Since the war started at the end of February, the worst damage caused by the closure of the strait has been offset by Saudi Arabia and the UAE sending more oil through alternative export outlets. Also, we've seen China choosing not to buy oil to substitute for its loss of 5 million barrels a day of Gulf supplies, helping to keep oil price pressures down. Also, we've seen some demand destruction in various countries around the world because of the lack of availability of oil and high prices. The International Energy Agency estimates that in the second quarter of 2026, global oil demand was about 5 million barrels a day lower than a year ago. And we've seen stock draws, both commercial stocks and government strategic stocks organized by the International Energy Agency. So we've had various offsets to the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. The problem is, if the renewed Middle East Gulf hostilities escalate, there are only limited buffers left to offset the lack of supply from the Strait of Hormuz. So we're in a very dangerous situation.
Neil, how serious is the threat to the Red Sea supply from the Houthis?
Since the Middle East conflict started earlier this year, the Houthis have been very quiet. For quite a long time after the Israel-Gaza conflict started at the end of 2023, the Houthis, who are basically sponsored by Iran, were attacking shipping in the Red Sea, not just oil tankers, but various types of shipping. More recently, they've gone quiet, but now they've resumed their threats to shipping, specifically to oil tankers leaving the Saudi Red Sea port of Yanbu, which is a major outlet for oil exports. Before the war, exports from Yanbu were about 1.1 million barrels a day, and since the disruption to the Strait of Hormuz, they've exceeded 3.6 million barrels a day. We're already seeing reports of ships that entered the Red Sea from the Suez Canal end have turned around, judging the risk to be too great. If the Houthis' attacks are successful, they don't actually have to hit a lot of ships. All they have to do is make clear to ship owners that there's a great risk. Other ships are probably going to avoid the Red Sea and instead sail all the way around Africa, and this will add time and cost to voyages. This is another major disruption to global oil supplies, potentially.
You also mentioned Ukraine. What do the Ukrainian drone attacks mean to the oil markets?
Well, this year, drone attacks by Ukraine against Russian energy installations have really ramped up. Ukraine has become a major producer and manufacturer of low-cost drones, and they've had tremendous success in targeting Russian pipelines, refineries, storage facilities. Now it's affecting exports of oil from the Black Sea. Kazakhstan usually sends more than 1 million barrels a day of oil through the Caspian Pipeline Consortium to the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk, from where it's exported to global markets. Recent attacks by Ukraine have hampered tanker operations there at Novorossiysk to such an extent that Kazakhstan has been forced to shut down the CPC pipeline system, and that is essentially putting at risk another 1 million barrels a day or so as supply to global markets, and thus potentially adding yet more upward price pressure to oil markets.
You mentioned the worst is yet to come. Is the sky the limit for oil prices? And how bad could it get?
Well, we've never been in a situation before where this amount of disruption from so many different places has taken place for such an extended period of time. So saying the sky's the limit for oil prices is not unreasonable, but where that limit might be, $150, $200, nobody can really say. What you can say, however, is that the possibility of these three factors, Ukraine, Russia, Red Sea, almost coming together, is so potentially serious for oil markets and the wider global economy that the main players, particularly in the Middle East war, must surely try to find a way to get another peace deal or at least another ceasefire. We're already seeing, as far as consumers are concerned, in the United States, for example, prices at the pump for gasoline are heading towards $4 a gallon. Of equal significance, and perhaps even actually more significance, is that the price of diesel, which is the workhorse of all economies, is rising. In the United States, diesel prices are already well above $5 a gallon. Every country in the world uses oil in various applications, and they are all going to be affected. And that, of course, has a negative knock-on effect on the wider global economy and will probably lead to a downgrading of GDP growth expectations.
Well, I guess all we can hope for is a quick resolution to the conflict. Neil, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Neil. For the full analysis, please visit Real Clear to check out Neil Atkinson's op-ed. The Gulf War is the worst still yet to come for oil. If you'd like to read more about Neil Atkinson's research, please check out our website at energyanalytics.org.